Hello and welcome to Hump Day. And as you know, this is Women's Week month and our Women's Week. This is the month, so Women's Week. So anyway, happy Women's Day to all of our women out there. Our lesson, the series has been God's glory, my story. It's my story, but He brings glory to my story. And today's lesson is a continuation of what we started last week, and it's entitled hashtag me too. Hashtag me too. And after studying this lesson, students will see and understand that one decision can make a great difference in our lives and in the lives of our family. Don't compromise in your commitment to the Lord, nor with the godless culture that surrounds you, because if you do, you'll be consumed by it. Because see, we need to understand we live in a wicked society, a world of immorality, violence, and lawlessness. I mean, just turn on the TV and you see in New York where they have put out all these barricades because it's expected that the grand jury is going to hand down an indictment against a former president for lying for a hush money that he was seeing a call girl, and now he has the nerve to get on the TV and talk about her like she wasn't human. And then you got people out there flying the flags, talk about make America great again. We're just living in some wicked, terrible times. And all we got to do is right here in our city, about what, a week, 2 weeks ago, that we had the police department called out for unconstitutional, just they did a little bit of everything. And so my sisters and brothers, we are just living in a wicked world. I mean, this is a dark, dark picture. And until we face the truth and are honest about it, we cannot attack nor correct the problems in our society and in our world. We see in our lesson today a pattern that we saw in last week's lesson. A young lady is sexually assaulted, and the father says nothing. I think that gets to me more than anything. The father says nothing. The world is asking today what God called out and asked Adam. You remember after Adam had eaten the forbidden tree, God came out, and I said, Adam, I know Eve ate from it too, but God held Adam responsible because he said, Adam, where art thou? And today we need to cry out, parents, where are you? Do you remember when the TV station used to have a little slogan, and they would come on and they would say, parents, it's 9 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock, whatever the time was. Do you know where your children are? And then I think someone changed that once and said, children, it's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your parents are? Woo! Well, let's move on to the lesson, because that's a good one right there. There is an old Russian parable about a hunter who came to a clearing and he encountered a bear. A bear. So the hunter raised his rifle to shoot the bear. And the bear said, whoa, 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 wait. What do you want? Why are you going to kill me? And the hunter said, I want a fur coat. The bear said, well, that's reasonable. He said, because I want a full stomach, so let's sit down and talk about it. So they did. And after a while, they got up. The bear walked away by himself. He had his full stomach, and the hunter had his fair coat. See, compromise isn't always a good thing. Sometimes it can be very, very dangerous and tricky and destructive. And that is especially true when it comes to spiritual matters. Now, God called Jacob back to Bethel. Genesis 31:13 said, I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. But you know what? Jacob, he gets up and he starts out. But he stops about a day's journey short of where God told him to go. And he stayed in Shechem. Why? Why Shechem? God said, go to Bethel, you stop in Shechem. Well, because Shechem was at the crossroads of trade, while Bethel was in the middle of the wilderness. Shechem offered material prosperity and greater comfort. And besides, it was close to where God wanted Jacob. It was a nice compromise. And Jacob could still worship God at Shechem just as well as he could at Bethel. Or so he thought. So Genesis 33:20 tells us, there he erected an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. El Elohe Israel means God, the God of Israel. But we see like father, like son, because Abraham, Jacob's grandfather, did the same thing. God called Abram to leave his relatives, his region, his religion. And Abram did it. But he stopped too short, and God had to call Abram a second time because Abram stopped short of where God told him to go. Now, I ask you, have you stopped short or where God told you to go or where God told you to do? Have you done the same thing? So think about it. So don't criticize Abram or Jacob until you thought about, have you stopped short of what God has told you to do? Abram did not go all the way with God. Not when God first called him. Because, see, we know Abraham now and we just love some Abraham. But Abraham did not do the first thing that God told him to do. He started out following the promises of God, and many of us, we start out following the promises of God. But just let a rabbit shoot past us, a red herring, and all of a sudden we no longer are following what God wants us to do. Abram started out following the promises of God, yeah. When he left Ur, to begin his journey, but he stopped in Haran, far short of the promised land. Now his grandson Jacob does the same thing. He stopped short of where God told him to go. Jacob stops short in his obedience to God. But he thinks building an altar is going to make up for it. Jacob has compromised in his commitment to God. He is trying to serve both God and money, thinking his prayers and spiritual activity can compensate for his lack of full obedience. Remember, watch who you sit down and talk with. Remember the hunter and the bear. And some Christians do the same thing. Remember the hunter and the bear. The bear won out. The hunter got what he wanted, but it wasn't the way he wanted. We tried to ride the fence between God and the world, thinking our prayers, our piety, our coming to church, our working in church will cover disobedience. But that never works. It does not work. It will never work. Because Jesus himself said, no man can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will devote to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. You cannot do it. So now let's look at our lesson. And let's look at hashtag me too. Genesis 34, verses 1 through 4. And we're reading from the Message translation. One day, Dinah, the daughter Leah had given Jacob, went to visit some of the women in that country. Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, who was chieftain there, saw her and raped her. Now let me say, Shechem is the name of the son, but also is the name of the city. I just want you to understand that. Then he raped Dinah. Then he felt a strong attraction to Dinah, Jacob's daughter, fell in love with her and wooed her. Now when it says wooed her, that ought to give you an indication that he didn't rape her and put her out like we saw Amnon do last week to Tamar. In fact, he does just the opposite. He keeps her in his house. Okay, and so Shechem went to his father Hamor, get me this girl for my wife. So the first point we need to look at is choices have consequences. That's nothing new. Choices have consequences. Now, our lesson features a young girl. She's probably around 12 or 15, somewhere between 12 and 15 years old, who decides to visit the young ladies in town. For whatever reason, Dinah left her home for what she thought might be a short time. It was the most disastrous choice she ever made. Nothing would ever be the same for her. Now, I'm going to tell you, in reading the background and some of the commentaries and what have you, the writers seemingly, to me, tried to fault Dinah for wanting to go into town. What is she going into town for? Here she is. She never said she's not satisfied. The Bible didn't say anything like that. It just said she went to visit some of the women in that country. Now, as far as I know, in reading the Bible, she is the only daughter that was born to Jacob. So what's wrong with wanting a little girl time, a little girlfriend time? So she perhaps saw some young girls her age in the town, and she wanted to go over there. What's the problem with that? But some of the writers wanted to say she knew better. How did she know better? That's the same thing that we get when a woman has been assaulted, and they say, well, she asked for it. Why? Because she dressed that way. Because she shouldn't have been out. She. Well, what about he? Okay. But anyway, she went. And in verses 2 and 3, it contained a brief summary of what happened to Dinah once she got close to the people, if not the city itself. The prince of the city was a young man. I don't know, because the Bible doesn't say whether he's young or old. He could have been a young man. He could have been an old man. But named Shechem, he's the son of Hamor. This Shechem saw Dinah, then took her, lay with her, defiled her, or as it is stated today, in today's language, he assaulted her sexually. There are other terms to describe this action by Shechem, none justifiable in the least. It just doesn't. But we should be reminded that evil usually starts with a thought and or a look before it proceeds into a dread, into a deed or action. In other words, he saw her, and then he made the choice. You remember David? 2 Samuel 11:23 said, it happened, 2 Samuel 11, 2 to 3, verses 2 and 3. It happened late one afternoon when David arose from his couch and went walking on the roof of the king's house, that he saw from the roof a woman bathing. He saw. So why didn't he just turn his head? He didn't. Because the woman was very beautiful. And David sent and inquired about the woman. So looking, and if you look and think, it will lead to action. Now, remember Samson. Samson was walking along and he saw a woman and he decided, I want her. And then he saw Delilah and he told his parents, get me her. So it all starts with just a look. And you got to be careful. Oh yeah, somebody could walk past and you could say, well, he looked nice, yeah, and let it go. But now, so Shechem, he saw Dinah, and he sexually assaulted her. And then something must have changed, because now Shechem is madly in love with Dinah, and he spoke kindly to her. Now one wonders what he was saying or trying to say to this young girl whom he had just violated or assaulted sexually. Was his love genuine, or was it just a passing fancy? The only thing that I can say about him, he's better than Amnon was last week. Because when he got what he wanted, then he said, get up and get out of here. Called the servant to put out his sister. Okay, let's get back to Genesis 34, verse 5 through 12. Jacob heard that Shechem had raped his daughter Dinah, but his sons were out in the fields with the livestock, so he didn't say anything until they got home. Hamor, Shechem's father, went to Jacob to work out marriage arrangements. Nowhere have you seen where he asked Dinah. He went to his dad and said, hey, get me this woman so I can marry this girl. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons, on their way back from the fields, heard what had happened. They were outraged, explosive with anger. Shechem's rape of Jacob's daughter was intolerable in Israel and not to be put up with. So now Hamor spoke with Jacob and his sons. My son Shechem is head over heels in love with your daughter. Give her to him as his wife, intermarry with us. Give your daughters to us, and we'll give our daughters to you. Live together with us as one family. Settle down among us and make yourselves at home. Prosper among us. Shechem then spoke for himself, addressing Dinah's father and brothers. Please say yes. I'll pay anything. Set the bridal price as high as you will. The sky's the limit. Only give me this girl for my wife. So, let's look at point number 2. They came, they requested, they suggested. Whatever Shechem's reason or motive was, he had at least tried to put an honorable spin on it. He asked his father, Hamor, to arrange it so that Dinah would become his wife. And if you remember, that's what Tamar last week begged Amnon to do, and he wouldn't do it. But now in this case, we have, he is begging for the woman so that he can marry her. Jacob knew at this point about the rape, and he was facing any number of emotions. He might have felt anger over his daughter being taken. And he might have been upset with Leah for not watching Dinah better. Because notice that Leah is not mentioned at all in the story except as Dinah's mother. He was in anguish over what happened to his daughter, and it added up to a genuine sense of frustration. Dinah was gone, and he couldn't do anything about it. At least that's what he thought. So Jacob held his peace. Now, until his sons came back from their work. Now Hamor, Shechem's father, went to speak with Jacob regarding his son marrying Jacob's daughter. But I want you to notice, there was no apology, no confession of wrongdoing, no sympathy, no suggestion that Shechem would be disciplined. In fact, Hamor was totally insensitive to the wrong that had been done. I would say insensitive to the wrong done to Dinah. So he first pleads his case. In those days, see, marriages were arranged by the fathers. The woman had nothing to say about it. And it had to be okay by the father and maybe other male relatives. So Hamor makes his proposal to convince Jacob and his sons to let Shechem marry Dinah. However, he didn't stop there. He made a further suggestion that sounds innocent enough. Got to be careful when you compromise. It seemed innocent enough at first, but as scripture later record, it could have been a trap for Jacob and his family. The suggestion went along these lines. Come on, intermarry with us. Let's join our sons with your daughters, and then let's join your sons with our daughters. You dwell with us, you can grow rich, and It's our, and it'll all be ours. I mean, I be yours. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Apparently, Jacob nor his sons were convinced of this, and that may be one reason why Shechem himself made a second pitch or appeal for Dinah. He asked if he could find grace in their sight and then offer them, let's say, a blank check, so to speak. He said, tell me whatever you might want, and I'll give it to you. Name your price, and let's make a deal. Just give me the girl to be my wife. And while he was making his proposal, here comes the sons in. See, they heard about the rape, and they were full of anger and fury. So now let's go and read some more. Genesis 34, 13 through 17. Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father with cunning. Their sister, after all, had been raped. So they said, this is impossible. We could never give our sister to a man who was uncircumcised. Why, we'd be disgraced. Are you kidding me? The only condition on which we can talk business is if all your men become circumcised like us. Then we will freely exchange daughters in marriage and make ourselves at home among you and become one big happy family. But if this is not an acceptable condition, we will take our sister and leave. So now, but they slick, cause this now let's go on and look. One request, one right, one remedy. This is one of the darkest. This is where the darkness of the whole situation begins. It was bad enough when Dinah left the campsite of her father, and worse when Shechem took her and held her as captive. What these men, Jacob and his sons, were thinking as they heard Hamor and Shechem make their pitch is anybody's guess, bargain or no bargain. Hamor and Shechem had Dinah, and they didn't seem to want to let her go. I want you to understand, let me say it again, that Dinah was still being held at Shechem's house, and in fact could be considered a prisoner. All right? So Jacob's sons are now engaging in a little bargaining of their own. So the darkness of sexual assault was bad enough. Now Jacob's sons are going to make things darker still. These men plan to use some deceit of their own, even as they plan revenge on Hamor and Shechem. Now the question has to be asked. Let me stop right here and ask the question. Where was Jacob at this time? What was he doing? Maybe Jacob felt like all he had done in his life, or maybe he's thinking boys will be boys. You know how, who knows. Now, note the reply of Jacob's sons, their deception and misuse of religion. They rejected the offer of marriage because the people of Shechem were not circumcised. They did lay down a condition whereby they would let their sister marry Shechem if all the males of Shechem could be circumcised and identify themselves with the clan of Israel. The couple could then be married. They also stated if these conditions were not met, they would be forced to take their sister and leave the land. They were all thinking and talking about Dinah, but no one asked Dinah what she wanted, because it really didn't matter what she wanted. Their reason or rationale seemed legitimate. We are special people, proved by circumcision, and we can't give any our women to any man who isn't circumcised. They also added, oh, by the way, if every male among you becomes circumcised, no problem. We'll stay with you and intermingle. But if not, be advised, we're going to take Dinah back and leave whether you like it or not. So Jacob's sons, they had just laid down the terms of a deal between themselves and Hamor and Shechem. And my guess is that Jacob's sons, stood in place with their arms folded like that and said, oh, there it is. Now you can take it or you can leave it. Waiting for Hamor and Shechem to make their decision. And it was going to get even darker after this. So now let's go read some more. Genesis 34, 18 through 24. That seemed fair enough to Haman and to his son Shechem. The young man was so smitten with Jacob's daughter that he proceeded to do what had been asked. He was also the most admired son in his father's family. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the public square and spoke to the town council. These men like us, they are our friends. Let them settle down here and make themselves at home. There's plenty of room in the country for them. And just think, we can even exchange our daughters in marriage. But these men will only accept our invitation to live with us and become one big family on one condition, that all our males become circumcised just as they themselves are. This is a very good deal for us, because see, these people are very wealthy with great herds of livestock, and we're going to get our hands on it. So let's do what they ask and have them settle down with us. Everyone who was anyone in the city agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised. Now, let's look at point number 4. If we give a little now, we can get a lot more later. As incredible as it may sound, Hamor and Shechem agreed to the terms laid down by Jacob's sons. Once everyone was present, they presented the benefits for agreeing to the proposal. There would be mutual peace and security. There would be great opportunity for trade. There would be a great nation of people through intermarriage. Hamor and Shechem then presented the condition: every male had to be circumcised. And they stressed the greatest benefit, that of financial gain. All the property of the Israelites would eventually be owned by the people of Shechem, for the Israelites would be absorbed through intermarriage. Now note why. Why? Because of greed and covetousness. They believed they were going to eventually gain all the property of the Israelites. Now let's wind it up. Genesis 34:25 through 31. 3 days after the circumcision, while all the men were still very sore, two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each with his sword in his hand, walked into the city as if they owned the place and murdered every man there. They also killed Hamor and his son Shechem, rescued Dinah from Shechem's house, and left. When the rest of Jacob's sons came on the scene of slaughter, they looted the entire city in retaliation for Dinah's rape. Flocks, herds, donkeys, belonging, everything, whether in the city or the fields, they took. And then they took all the wives and children captive and ransacked their homes for anything valuable. Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You made my name repulsive to the people here." Now here Jacob finally says, these Canaanites and Perizzites, if they decide to gang up on us and attack, as few as we are, we couldn't stand a chance. They'd wipe me and my people right off the map. And you know how the sons responded? They said, "Nobody's going to treat our sister like a whore and get by with it." That's all they had to say. Oh man, I don't care what you saying. They're not going to treat our sister like that. I have to, look, I can't say nothing. So let's look at the right and the left, and then we'll close it out. The pain of the circumcision procedure lasted for several days, longer than they thought. And after Dinah's two brothers knew, when Moses wrote that the men were sore, he knew exactly what it meant because he had been circumcised. And two of Dinah's brothers knew what that meant too. All of them really knew because they had all been circumcised. Simeon and Levi, Dinah's second and third oldest brothers, took some prompt action. Who knows what they said to any of the others in Jacob's land, but they were going to get Dinah back by any means necessary. So they took their swords and they set out, and they killed like two two-man wrecking crew, killing every male in Shechem. They killed every male in Shechem. And they didn't stop there either. Simeon and Levi find Hamor and Shechem, both probably in as much pain as the other men, and killed them too. Now, I tell you, that was really sneaky to get them all circumcised and then walk in and kill them. They found Dinah and took her. Then they left. But the story doesn't end yet. Afterward, verse 27 tells us, the sons of Jacob went back and spoiled the city, meaning they took everything that wasn't nailed down. The brothers also took the wealth, the livestock, and anything that they could carry. They took the wives of Shechem captive, plus the little ones, meaning the children. No, they did not kill any of them, but the final destination of these people is not known. We don't know what happened to them. Before, Dinah had left her home and paid dearly for it. Now the people who were responsible for this, what happened to her, paid even more dearly. Be sure your sins will find you out. Because Galatians 6 and 7 says, be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reaps. And verse 9 in Galatians 6, and let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. And now, guess what? You see Anita Faye Hill, an American lawyer, educator, and author. She's a professor of social policy, law, and women's study at Brandeis University, and a faculty member of the university's Heller School for Social Policy and Management. And she became a national figure in 1991 when she accused U.S. Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas, her supervisor at the United States Department of Education and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, of sexual harassment. And he had harassed her on her job. And 4 female witnesses waited in the wing to support Hill's credibility, but they were not called. #MeToo, she said, look, I was harassed. He harassed her, and he still sits on the Supreme Court to this day. But these witnesses that Anita Hill had, they were not called due to what the Los Angeles Times described as a private compromise. There's that word, be careful who you compromise. There are times when you can compromise, but you got to be careful what and who you compromise with. They struck up a compromise deal between Republicans and the Senate Judiciary Committee chairperson. Do you see who it was? Democrat Joe Biden. Now, yes, Joe Biden has done a whole lot of changing. Clarence Thomas hasn't. Well, that's our lesson for today. And our series has been a good one, God's Glory, My Story. Let me thank you all for enjoying the study that we have done in Women's Month, and the feedback has been tremendous. And if you thought that was something, you tune in for the April series. It's called The Real GOAT, GOAT. That's the acronym for Greatest of All Time. You want to know who the greatest of all time is? Well, tune in next week. And our lesson is the Day of Atonement. Get your pencil, your paper, your Bible, your highlighter, because you will want to keep some notes on this lesson. And so I invite you also to tune in during Holy Week. We'll make, Holy Week. We'll be able to get announce it again next week. Holy Week, we will have a special series that's entitled The Week That Changed the World, going from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday. We have special lessons on showing you what Jesus did each day. Sunday, Palm Sunday, riding into Jerusalem. Monday, teaching. Tuesday, teaching. So join us at noon during Holy Week, and then join us for Good Friday services that noon on Good Friday, and then join us for Holy Week. In fact, if you want to join us and become a member of St. Stephen, then just let us know. Contact us at newstart@ssclive.org or call at 502-583-6798. And we will be more than happy to get you connected to the right person to get everything done. And don't forget, tune in with us as we travel through the month of April, talking about the real goal. And it promises to be a great series. I thank you for joining us and see you next week. Be blessed.